I found her scarf in my brother's backseat, and for the first 2 hours, I tried to lie to myself about what it meant. It started with a practical inconvenience. My car wouldn't start outside the office. Ignition failure, second time that month. I called my brother because he lived nearby and owed me more than one favor. He picked me up 10 minutes later, tossed me his keys, and told me to hang on to the car overnight. "I'll get an Uber," he said. "No worries." I adjusted the driver's seat when I got in. He's shorter than I am. As I moved the seat back, I noticed something wedged deep in the crease between the passenger seat and the console. Just a bit of pale blue fabric. I pulled it free without thinking. It was her scarf. Not just similar. It was hers. Same silk texture, same worn stitching near the corner where the thread had started to come loose. There was a tiny L embroidered on the edge. I paid extra for that when I gave it to her on our 3rd anniversary. I froze, holding it like it might explain itself if I stared long enough. It didn't. And the smell, faint perfume, unmistakably hers, was fresh. Not something that had sat in a car for weeks. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe she dropped it during a ride with him. We'd all been at our mom's house last weekend. They could have shared a drive. But I knew better. I knew her habits. She never left her scarves in cars. She folded them into her purse like they were fragile. Still, I didn't say a word that night. When I got home, she was already on the couch with her laptop and a glass of wine, wearing that calm domestic expression like the day hadn't shaken her in the slightest. I handed her a receipt from the pharmacy I'd stopped at. She smiled, thanked me, and asked if I wanted takeout or to cook. She didn't ask about the car. And that was the first real tell. We ate dinner like any other night, talked about the neighbor's dog, some promotion her coworker got, and whether we should finally replace the washer. She laughed at something I said about the noise it made. I watched her, studying how easily the performance came. After she went to bed, I opened the glove compartment and took the scarf out again. I didn't sleep. I just stared at it on my desk for hours while the questions lined up in my head like a list of debts. The next morning, I checked the coat closet. All her scarves were neatly arranged, organized by season, by color. The pale blue one wasn't there. I stood in front of that closet for longer than I should have, not moving, not touching anything, just verifying the absence. She came down 15 minutes later, kissed my neck like usual, poured me coffee, told me she might be late that evening. Team meeting. Then she left. She was getting good at lying. Or maybe I'd gotten bad at noticing. I told myself I needed more than a scarf. I needed a pattern, a second anomaly. One clue could be anything. 2 starts a story. So I tested her. That night I asked if she'd seen my brother recently. "No, not since Mom's," she said, reaching for her glass. "Why?" "No reason. Just wondering if he gave you back that book you lent him." Her eyes paused for a second, just enough. Then she shrugged. "Must have forgotten. He never borrowed a book from her." I made that up. But she played along. Lied without hesitation. That confirmed something far worse than the scarf. Coordination. They'd talked since then. They were keeping track of stories. I didn't confront her. I didn't confront him. That's the difference between suspicion and strategy. I wanted confirmation, not conflict. The next afternoon, I called my brother. I kept my tone light, casual. "Hey, by the way, meant to ask. You give Elle her scarf back?" There was a pause on his end before he replied. "What scarf?" I leaned back in my chair, voice even. "Blue one. I found it in your car." This time the silence stretched longer. Then he said, "Huh. I don't remember that." I let that hang a beat before adding, "She must have left it during that family dinner, right?" "Yeah," he said a little too quickly. "Probably then." They weren't even bothering to sync stories. Or maybe they thought I wouldn't check. I ended the call without another word and didn't bring it up again. But I knew then, this wasn't random. She'd been in that car recently. That scarf hadn't been there long. And neither of them had the instinct to tell the truth. That night, I stood in the doorway watching her unload the dishwasher. She smiled, asked me about my day, and leaned into me like nothing had changed. I watched her hands move over plates and glasses, steady, practiced, automatic. I thought about how many times I'd told her I trusted her more than anyone. That was the last time I believed it. Once the first lie settles, you start noticing them everywhere. 2 days after I found the scarf, she mentioned a new workout class she'd started. "Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6, she said casual, like it was something she'd meant to bring up earlier. But Tuesday was the day I had her scarf in my hand, and she told me she'd been at the office late that evening. I didn't say anything. Instead, I checked our shared calendar. She'd marked those workout classes, just recently. The entries were clean and deliberate, backdated 2 weeks, all added the same day. I waited until she was in the shower and pulled her running shoes from the closet. Clean. Too clean. No wear on the soles. No gym receipts in her purse. I checked the trunk of her car. Nothing. No yoga mat, no gym bag, no change of clothes. Either she was the tittiest athlete in the world, or she wasn't exercising. She was hiding something. And the more I noticed, the more obvious it became. Her phone lived face down. Her lock screen notifications were off. I hadn't thought much of that before. We respected privacy. We'd always had a don't tread over each other's shoulders rule. But trust isn't a rule. It's a belief you stop questioning when life feels safe. I wasn't safe anymore. That weekend, we went to my mother's for dinner. She'd invited both of us. My brother was there, of course. He greeted me like normal. Same handshake, same easy grin. Nothing in his voice wavered. But when she walked into the room, something changed. He didn't look at her right away. She said hello first, just a little too brightly. I stood back and watched the delay between their glances. The gap was small, just a fraction of a second, but it was there. People in an affair forget that timing tells on them. We sat through dinner as if everything were normal. My mother talked about the neighbors, the new flooring she wanted. My wife complimented her cooking. My brother made a joke about football, and everyone laughed, except me. I kept waiting to feel crazy, paranoid, insecure. But I didn't. I felt clean, detached, like someone flipping pages in a file they hadn't opened in years. She passed my brother the salad bowl, and for a moment their hands touched. Barely. But I saw his jaw tighten. I saw her glance down as if it hadn't happened. When we left that night, she asked what was wrong. I said I was just tired. She rubbed my arm, said she'd run me a bath when we got home. I told her not to bother. That Sunday, I started going through our financials. I had access to everything. We'd merged accounts after buying the house. She never changed passwords. I'd made sure of that. I didn't find anything shocking at first. No secret transfers. No unexplained withdrawals. But I did notice this. 3 charges for the same boutique hotel downtown, once every 3 weeks. Always weekdays. Always mid-afternoon. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. I opened their website. All 3 charges matched their midday, executive getaway, promotion, a private suite, 3-hour limit, champagne included. I closed the tab. I didn't print the receipts. Not yet. I wasn't ready to see my marriage reduced to timestamps and line items. But I saved the statements. I noted the dates. I started a file on my hard drive. No dramatic label. Just a folder titled Personal. That night she asked me to rub her shoulders. Said she was sore from those new stretches. I told her I had a deadline. She kissed me anyway and went to bed early. I sat in the living room in the dark, watching the blue light of the TV flick across the walls while my laptop screen glowed in front of me. Her calendar was still open. I copied the hotel charge dates into it. Then I opened my brother's social media. He'd been tagged fishing on 2 of those days. The third was blank. He wasn't fishing. He was with her. I closed everything down. The strange part was how calm I felt. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing for a decision. And I knew I couldn't make it without being sure. No accusations. No confrontations. I wasn't ready for what came after. But I also knew this wasn't just a lapse. This was organized, rehearsed, which meant it was still happening. If they'd stopped while they were ahead, maybe I'd still be guessing. But they didn't stop. They got comfortable. That's how I caught them. The next Thursday, I pretended I had a late meeting. I didn't. I parked 4 blocks from the boutique hotel and walked. Didn't bring a camera. Didn't call anyone. Just stood across the street behind a construction fence and waited. At 2:17 p.m., he pulled up. At 2:24, she walked out of the coffee shop on the corner, crossed diagonally, and got in the car. They didn't kiss. They didn't even look at each other as they entered. But I recognized the tension. The choreography of 2 people who've rehearsed every move. I stayed until the hotel doors shut behind them. Then I walked home. No photos. No proof. But I didn't need proof anymore. I needed a plan. That night, she told me she wanted to go out that weekend. Just us, she said. It's been a while. I agreed. Smiled. Said that sounded great. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. I told him I wasn't ready to file yet, just wanted to understand my options, property rights, shared assets, liabilities. He pulled up our purchase agreement, scanned it, and raised an eyebrow. She didn't contribute? He asked, tapping the down payment line. She was between jobs at the time, I said. I covered it. He flipped to the next page. And the deed? Joint, I replied. For now. He nodded slowly, closing the folder. That can be changed. Quietly. He gave me a list of steps. I took them all. That weekend, I let her choose the restaurant. We sat at a corner table by the window, and she laughed the same way she always had, leaning forward, hand on my wrist, eyes bright. She looked exactly like the woman I married, but I couldn't find her in there anymore. Every affectionate gesture felt like watching someone impersonate her, like a rerun of a life I used to believe in. I asked her about work. She said it was stressful but manageable. I asked her about my brother, offhand, just curiosity. She didn't flinch. Said she hadn't talked to him in weeks. I smiled and nodded. That's when I realized she believed she was still in control. She thought I was still the same man who trusted her without question. That gave me the edge I needed. By Monday, I'd begun extracting her from the house, not physically, legally. First, I refinanced in my name only. She didn't notice the documents were missing from our file drawer. Then I adjusted the home insurance policy, named myself sole beneficiary. I had receipts for every major expense on the property, every renovation, every payment, all from my accounts. I created a digital trail she couldn't counter. Not easily. And all the while, I still cooked dinner, still watched movies with her, still said goodnight with a kiss on the cheek. She didn't know I was building the exit. Then, something small unraveled her control. A friend of ours, Lena, mentioned in a group text that she'd run into my brother and your wife at a bookstore downtown. It was a casual mention, meant nothing to her, just a fun coincidence. Except it wasn't. I hadn't heard about any bookstore. I hadn't heard about any outing. I responded with a thumbs up and nothing more. An hour later, Lena texted me directly. Said my wife looked distracted during the meetup. Hope everything's okay, she wrote. I told her we were fine. Then I deleted the message. That was the first time I felt something close to hate, not just betrayal. It was the ease of it all. The repetition. The way they slipped between my life like it was a rental. I went into the basement that night and opened the fireproof box we kept for important documents. Our title deed was there. I made a copy, scanned it, saved it under a new name. Revision. Then I opened my browser and started researching power of attorney removals. Quiet ones. She was upstairs, watching some drama on TV. I could hear her laugh. My brother's name came up in the dialogue. I listened for her reaction. She didn't laugh that time. That's when I knew she was starting to feel the shift. But not enough to stop. They always assume they're one step ahead, until the floor drops. When they slipped, they didn't stumble. They dropped the whole mask. It was small, like most real mistakes are. She left her laptop open one night. I was walking past the dining table and saw the screen still lit, half buried under an open notebook. The top email was from him. I didn't even open it, just read the preview bar. You make me feel sane again. Thursday can't come fast enough. I stood there, silent, unmoving, my hand tightening around the back of the dining chair. I already knew. This just confirmed what I'd stopped needing to prove. Thursday. They were still using that hotel. Still lying to my face. Still coordinating it between fake meetings and team calls. She came into the room humming, saw me standing there, and glanced at the laptop. Too late. She kept walking, kissed my shoulder, and asked if I wanted anything from the kitchen. I shook my head. Her fingers hesitated on my arm just a second too long. She was wondering how much I saw. That night, I moved most of my money out of the joint account. Left enough to look normal. Enough to keep her from noticing. The next morning, I met with the lawyer again. We updated the documents, removed her from survivorship benefits, adjusted power of attorney, and finalized the revised title transfer under asset protection. All legal. All quiet. She wouldn't see any of it until it was too late to react. I left nothing that could be used against me. No angry emails. No emotional texts. Just silence and measured movements. But even calculated silence builds tension. 2 nights later, she asked if everything was okay. We were eating dinner. She was talking about someone from work, and I wasn't nodding at the right moments. I was too far inside my own head. "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." She looked at me a beat too long, then turned back to her plate. She was starting to feel the gap growing between us. She just didn't know which direction it was coming from. I watched her lie about what she did that afternoon. She said she had a conference call at 3. She was downtown. I knew because I drove past the hotel and saw her car in the back alley lot, parked where the cameras don't face. That night, I retrieved the scarf again. Not for evidence, not to hurt myself, just to remember what it felt like. That moment everything cracked open. Then came the twist I didn't expect. I stopped by my mother's house the next day. She wanted to give me some old photo albums she'd finally organized. I stepped into the kitchen, and she was on the phone. Didn't hear me at first. "I just don't think it's fair to keep pretending," she was saying. "He's going to find out eventually, and I don't want to be in the middle anymore." A pause. Then softly, "It's been going on since Thanksgiving, and you promised it would end." I didn't move. Another pause. "I love you, but this is wrong. You're both wrong." I turned and walked back outside without taking the albums, sat in my car and stared at the dashboard for 15 minutes before driving away. My mother knew. She knew and kept silent. That night, I sat in the guest room and stared at the wall. I thought about every time I trusted the two people who now used my loyalty as a meeting place. I thought about every dinner, every shared laugh, every offer to help him move or cover for her when she was too tired for an event. It was never about just them. It was about me being the placeholder, the one too steady to question the shifting floor beneath him. That was when something inside me shifted. Not rage. Not sorrow. Resolve. I didn't go back to my mother's for the rest of the month. When she texted, I answered politely. When she called, I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't angry at her. I understood her silence the same way I understood my own, self-protection masquerading as loyalty. But I couldn't look at her face until I was ready. And I wasn't ready. Instead, I focused on execution. I printed a clean copy of the title deed with her name removed, updated, notarized, and filed. I placed it in a plain envelope, sealed it, and left it in my desk drawer. I didn't write anything on the outside. She would know what it meant when the time came. Then I cleaned the scarf. I took it to the dry cleaner down the street. The woman behind the counter asked if I wanted it pressed. I said no, just cleaned. I needed it to look untouched. I needed it to carry no trace of me when I returned it to where it belonged. It came back 3 days later in a clear plastic sleeve, folded neatly. I didn't open it. I kept it exactly as they gave it to me. The following Friday, I drove to my brother's house while he was at work. I still had a key. He gave it to me 2 years ago when he went on vacation and needed someone to water the plants. He never asked for it back. I used it. Walked in through the side door, past the framed photos of us growing up that still hung on the hallway wall, and stepped into the bedroom. It still amazed me how normal everything looked. Same gray sheets, same lamp I helped him install, same bookshelf we carried up the stairs together when he moved in. I placed the envelope on the bed. Then I laid the scarf on top, still in its plastic. No note, no message, no instructions, just facts. A week later, my wife walked into the kitchen and froze. I had left a second copy of the deed on the table, this one not in an envelope. Her name was still scratched off, a thick black line cutting through what used to be hers. She picked it up, scanned it, and went pale. "What is this?" she asked. "An update," I said calmly. "Just paperwork." She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "Why would you? You should ask him," I said, and walked past her. She followed me into the hallway. Her voice was different now, frantic but still grasping for control. "Wait, this doesn't make sense. What are you talking about?" I turned and looked her in the eye. "You lied," I said. "I gave you every chance not to, and you kept lying." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I gave her the final blow. "You should check with the hotel. They charge a cleaning fee if the room smells like perfume." Her face broke then. Not into tears, into silence. I left her standing in the hall. That evening, she asked to talk. I listened. Not because I needed her explanation, but because I wanted to hear which version of the story she thought might save her. She said it was a mistake. She said it happened once. She said she didn't want to lose me. I sat there still, not speaking. Then I said the only thing that mattered. "You already did." She moved out 3 days later. No drama. No suitcase in the rain. No broken plates or shouting matches. Just a quiet Tuesday afternoon and the sound of drawers being emptied behind a closed bedroom door. I didn't help. I didn't stop her. I didn't even ask where she was going. That wasn't my concern anymore. She left a note on the kitchen table. I didn't read it. By the end of that week, I had every document I needed. The house was legally mine. The accounts were split. The joint credit card had been closed and reissued under my name only. She didn't realize how fast it could happen when someone stops loving you and starts protecting themselves, but she still had one surprise left waiting for her. We agreed to meet at a neutral place to sign final property separation paperwork. She showed up in sunglasses and a neutral tone, trying to keep things civil, maybe still hoping to negotiate. We sat across from each other in a small conference room with a mediator present. When they slid the paperwork across the table, she smiled like it was all finally becoming manageable. Then she saw the totals. Her face cracked. "What is this?" she asked the mediator. He explained. "This reflects the revised asset structure based on recent filings. Your name was removed from the deed prior to formal separation. Your shared accounts were dissolved prior to notice of conflict. This reflects the remaining equitable share under revised terms." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "You moved everything?" she whispered. I nodded. "You planned this?" she said. "Yes," I said. After the second hotel visit, she leaned back like the air had left her body. The mediator placed a small envelope beside the documents. "He's included an optional settlement offer," he said. She picked it up like it might bite her. Inside, a modest lump sum, enough to pay first and last month's rent somewhere basic, and a printed list of one-bedroom rentals under 1,000 in our area. She said nothing. The room was silent for almost a full minute. Then she whispered, "You really hate me." "No," I said, and I meant it. "I just finally stopped letting you pretend." The mediator asked if she'd like to take time before signing. She shook her head. Signed everything. Left without looking back. Later that night, I walked through the house, our house, no longer hers, and paused in the doorway of the guest room she once wanted to turn into a creative office. I sat down in the center of the empty floor and closed my eyes. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence, but it was mine,